Is there a best way to track HRV? Heart rate variability, or HRV, is one of the best objective measurement tools we can get to gauge a sense of our recovery and how well we are ready to perform at our very best. But is there a proper way to look at this measurement, and how can we use this to make informed decisions about our rest and recovery protocols? Looking at these numbers can definitely be confusing depending on which device you're using to track your HRV. I've seen numbers that go way up and down over the course of a single day. And are these numbers actually telling us anything useful about when's the best time to train or how well we are actually recovered? So I want to talk about how looking at the macro level of your HRV over the course of weeks and months is going to make a much bigger difference than those day-to-day fluctuations that we often see in these numbers, depending on the device that you're using. So you're probably using HRV as a way to objectively look at your recovery scores so that you can perform your best or know when to back off and avoid overtraining. And so one thing that I find very important to do in terms of this is also tie it in subjectively to how well you feel you're recovering. And there's a couple of questions that I like to ask myself or record in a journal on a daily basis in order to tie this in with my HRV and get more self-awareness around my recovery levels as well. So there are three main questions that I'll ask myself depending on the time frame and how I feel or how in tune I feel with my body. The first is, how ready do I feel to perform? And this is sometimes known as the RPE, or rating of perceived exertion. Sometimes you can tie that in with your readiness to perform. The next one is, how well did I sleep? And then the third is, what are my stress levels? So these three questions give us a subjective scoring of our recovery that we can then compare to that objective data from HRV to start to build some more self-awareness around recovery too. So I like to do these on a 1 to 10 scale, and you can use any of your favorite note-taking apps for this, or I like to draw it out in a bullet journal or dot grid paper notebook, and so that I've got a big picture look at my month at a glance and my stress levels as well as my recovery or sleep scores. And so this is something that I like to do with all of my coaching clients when we're talking about recovery and stress management, is tying together this subjective data and objective data to build that self-awareness into their routine so that they don't have to just rely on external devices like watches or rings or bands to record HRV to tell you how you're recovering. The more that you get this self-awareness and this better sense of your recovery, the less reliant you become on these external devices. And it's important to build this self-awareness because our bodies know best, and we can often psych ourselves into higher states of performance or also convince ourselves that we're not as ready to perform. And so knowing your self-awareness and building this intuitive level of performance is important so that you can avoid burning out or overtraining when you know that you need to back off. And the good news, and one point I want to make about overtraining, is that real overtraining is extremely rare. We're likely not going to reach that point that is extremely detrimental, but you can still see your performance degrade, or you're not going to make as great of improvements as you could otherwise if you do still take into account the importance of recovery in your schedule. So now let's get back to that question of, how do you track HRV and what's the best way? I don't believe that any one tool or device is the clear winner. It's more about using it consistently, whatever you've already got or whatever you're considering getting, and using it consistently to look at the trends over time. So I've used a bunch of different devices to track HRV, including the Apple Watch and Oura Ring, as well as some of the chest straps that have the ANT Plus mode. And the Oura Ring is considered to be the best consumer product as far as accuracy and precision for HRV tracking goes. One of the reasons for this is that it prioritizes your HRV through the night, and particularly in those early hours of the morning, which is when your sympathetic nervous system tends to be shut off the most. And so your parasympathetic can engage the most to give you that representation of what your HRV is doing. So if you are looking at getting a device and looking at using HRV to more objectively measure your recovery scores, I do suggest that you use it throughout the whole night in order to get the best representation of your overall recovery score. And then, of course, sometime in the morning after you wake up is when you can kind of reflect on your sleep overall for the night, as well as how stressed or how ready you feel to perform, so that you can take these subjective measurements and compare it to what the Oura Ring or the Whoop Band or your Apple Watch is telling you. And then you'll develop more of that intuition and self-awareness into your recovery without depending on the device. If your average HRV is moving in a positive direction, then you are recovering well, or you can push your training to another level. And if you see that things are trending downwards over time, it might be an important point where you need to recover a bit more, train a little bit less, or do some other practices that are going to help to boost your recovery further. Often after a couple of weeks of doing this, you're going to start to get a sense of some of the trends in your own life, whether that's month-end quotas at work that you're trying to meet, where you see your recovery plummet, or if you find that the start of the week is when your HRV is really at the highest, then you know that it's partially because of the extra recovery and time that you took to unwind over the weekend that is contributing to this positive effect. And you can start to make more informed decisions on how you can recover your best. So if you like this video, hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can learn more about peak performance and how to recover so that you can perform your best. And until the next one, find your flow.